Hello, everyone. Thanks again for joining me on Wednesday, May the 6th, for another thought for the day. Now, I hope this finds you well, and I hope you're not too concerned, too anxious, too worried about these unusual times that we're going through. I say that deliberately, friends, because I want to talk about worry and anxiety generally in this talk this evening. Now, to do that, you're going to have to permit me to ramble a wee bit. I'm going to do a wee bit of reminiscing here, and you'll have to bear with me and hang in there. And hopefully, if it all comes together, you'll see where I'm going to eventually. But for the moment, just enjoy or at least listen to my aimless ramblings to begin with. I'm going way back to when I was a teenager, and I've already mentioned, some of you may know, that I was a very keen golfer in my young days. And I had the opportunity to play once in the North of Ireland Golf Championship, Amateur Golf Championship, which was held up at Royal Portrush every July. And a few of us, golfing mates and myself, we thought we'd organise a trip to play in the tournament, and we would stay in a caravan just beside the golf course, Caravan Park, which is still there today. And probably the caravan which we stayed in is probably still there as well. But I remember it well. There were six of us trying to stay in a six-berth caravan, which was all very logical. But by the time word got out amongst our other friends that here was some cheap lodgings, well, actually, I think there ended up to be about 10 or 12 of us in a six-berth caravan, which wasn't too pleasant. It was made even more unpleasant by the fact that it was quite a wet week, and if you can imagine 12 guys trying to dry out their clothes, their golf shoes, their golf bags, their waterproofs, all their gear in the confines of a six-berth caravan. Well, it doesn't really bear thinking about, and it didn't make for a very pleasant experience. Any wonder I remember it. But anyway, I digress. As the week progressed, some of us were doing quite well, and were getting more and more nervous as the competition continued. And I remember one chap gave me a book to read, and I remember the book well. I was a young believer at the time, quite naive regarding the things of theology. But this book, which I'm not recommending at all, by the way, but it's a very famous book, it was a bestseller. It was a book called The Power of Positive Thinking by a chap called Norman Vincent Peale, an American chap. And basically there was a whole book to read, but some of us, and a lot of these guys, had no thought about the Lord at all. But in this book, which was kind of religious, kind of Christian, but we latched on to this one particular text. And it was a wonderful text. It was in Philippians 4:13. I'm sure a lot of you know it well. It says there, "I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me." Now, way back then, I don't think the worse of me for this, but we all tried to apply this to our failing golf games. In other words, when we get into a sticky corner, or there was a difficult opponent, or there was a tricky shot, well, this text would come into our minds. Don't worry, we can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Now, talk about taking a text out of context. It's not meant to be used in that way at all, in any way, shape or form. But looking back in those days, at least it got some of the other guys to think and mention the name of Christ in a more wholesome way than perhaps they were used to. But that's perhaps what we need today, friends. Properly speaking, we need to have the power of positive thinking where the situation nowadays is concerned and where our relationship with the Lord is concerned. I've made a wee list here of some of the things that people are anxious about just at the moment. And you'll not need me to remind you of them, but I'm going to do it anyway. But we're obviously anxious about the virus, how widespread it is, whether we are going to get it or not personally, or whether someone close to us, family, friends, neighbours, loved ones, whether they're going to come down with the virus. Anxious whether we get it or not, and anxious if we do get it, whether we're going to survive or not. These are legitimate concerns, friends. But there's other things. There's the time it seems to be taking to find a vaccine. Even when we do get a vaccine, how long is it going to take to manufacture enough to vaccinate, well, basically the whole world? We are anxious about isolating ourselves. Some people have been locked away, as it were, in their homes for coming up on 7 weeks now, and the novelty of it is beginning to wear off. What about our jobs, friends? Will we have jobs to go back to? Are we going to lose our jobs? What about employment generally when things pick up again? Young people with exams, trying to go to university, anxious about their future. We all know of people who are elderly and more vulnerable than the rest of us, and we're anxious for them as well. All those care workers, all those NHS workers, all those frontline workers who are doing such a great job, we're praying for them, and we're anxious that they too will be kept free from infection. There's all those care homes that we hear so much in the news, infection within care homes, again targeting the elderly and the vulnerable. We're anxious about that as well. And then the economy generally. What's the economy going to be like when we start to get back to normal? It's taking an awful beating. How is this going to affect not only our jobs and employment, but our savings, our pensions, the plans we have for the future? We've already had to cancel holidays and all sorts of things. How many more things do we need to list that we are anxious about? Now, friends, these are legitimate concerns. I'm not trying to minimise them in any way, shape or form. And we know, those of us who profess faith, we know what we should do. What we should be doing and what we are doing, of course, can be two different things. But we're told all the time that we should cast our cares upon the Lord. We should give them over to Him and allow Him to take care of things. Now, that's an awful lot easier said than done, friends. We continue to worry. And I think somebody coined the phrase that worry is a wee bit like sitting on a rocking chair, rocking back and forward. It gives you something to do, but it doesn't actually get you anywhere. And of course, we know that worry in itself, it doesn't help the situation, and it certainly doesn't help us either. But we just seem to have a bias towards worry. Now, I'm a great believer in saying to people that if you're not to do something, you're not to be anxious and worry about all these things. Well, if you're not to be anxious for those things, what can you do? What can you replace that anxiety with? Because, friends, when you're thinking on being anxious and worrying about all those things, not only is it not doing you any good, it's tying up a lot of your time and your nervous energy and your attention, which takes you away from, well, a lot of other things we should be occupied in, not least thinking about the Lord. So I'm going to stay with Philippians 4 and give you a different verse from this particular chapter. Because instead of getting ourselves all tied up in knots by focusing on the negative and all the hypothetical things that may or may not happen, which we may or may not be able to influence, I leave this verse with you, friends. Philippians 4 and verse 8. Finally, Paul says, he's nearing the end of his letter. There's only 4 chapters in Philippians. And as he comes to the end, he says, finally, brethren. This is what he wants to leave with them. Whatever things are true, whatever things are noble, whatever things are just, whatever things are pure, whatever things are lovely, whatever things are of good report, meditate on these things. So friends, take your mind off all the negativity that's going about. Let's think about something positive. Let's think on these things that are listed in Philippians 4 and verse 8. Because if we do that, the next verse, Paul promises that the God of peace will be with you. And I'd rather have the God of peace with me than all these negative waves that are crossing through everybody's mind at the moment. So that's what I leave with you, friends. A thought for today. Please do leave all those things with the Lord. And while you're doing that, don't think on them. Give them over to Him, and you concentrate on the things listed in Philippians 4 and verse 8. That's the way forward, friends. Oh, and by the way, the other text that I began with, it's true as well. In the proper context, we can indeed do all things through Christ who strengthens us. There you have it, friends. Thank you again for allowing me the time to talk to you. Please keep praying, keep washing your hands, keep looking up, keep safe. Don't worry, and I'll speak to you again soon. Until then, bye for now.